Welcome in to another episode of the Father, Son, and the Holy Buckeye podcast. I'm Sean. With me, as always, is the father himself, Rob Simzak. Dad, we are in the middle of July. A month from now, we're going to be having NFL preseason games going on, and we'll be in the middle of fall training camp across the country for college football. So I say things are looking up, but how are you feeling on this fine July Friday?
Friday? Yeah, buddy. I'm as shiny as Snelly Belly's head. How about that?
I love it. If anyone's confused about that, we were at a good friend's wedding this past weekend, and he recently shaved his head, and he's all bald, and it looks great.
It does look good, but I'm as shiny and as cool as that dew.
I love it. I love it. I'm really pumped about today's episode. We're gonna talk some college football head coaches, talk about who the best coaches in the country are. But before we get into that, our rival up north just cannot help but keep making headlines.
In a bad way.
Exactly. So, for those that might not be familiar, this is all going back to 2023 with Michigan's sign stealing scandal. We thought we put this to rest, but Chris Partridge, a former Michigan offensive assistant, filed a federal lawsuit in the past couple weeks alleging that former Michigan President Santa Ono, the same president who left the school to go to become Florida's president, and then Florida found something out about him to make them move on from him and no longer bring him in to be president. Chris Partridge is alleging that Santa Ono and current Michigan Athletic Director Ward Manuel discovered Connor Stalions' sign stealing operation back in January of 2023, which was 9 months earlier than it publicly broke. The lawsuit claims that Michigan had evidence of the scheme and discovered it on Matt Weiss's hard drive when they were investing him for a separate computer crimes investigation, which sounds a lot more innocent than it actually was. Matt Weiss was hacking into the university's database, stealing undergrad females' pictures and selling it online. So that's what they were investigating. And during that investigation, they uncovered evidence of this sign stealing operation that they had going on at the time. Partridge alleges that President Ono explicitly ordered the staff not to take any written notes regarding the findings to prevent a paper trail, effectively burying the scandal to protect the team's subsequent 2023 national championship run. On top of that, Partridge is claiming that Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti approached Ward Manuel in November of that season with knowledge of all of this, knowing that Michigan had been sitting on this for almost a year to this point, and Tony Petitti threatened to air this out in open court. To avoid that, Ward Manuel allegedly agreed with Tony Petitti to make Partridge the scapegoat and drop Michigan's legal fight against the Big Ten that was going on during this time. So this athletic department then intentionally leaked false narratives to national sports writers claiming that Partridge was fired for destroying evidence on Stallion's computer, a narrative which the NCAA's final report never supported. Partridge's suit also claims that the athletic department knew about the inappropriate relationship between Sharon Moore and his assistant Paige Shiver for years, but failed to act. And there are resurfaced texts between Shiver and Moore that indicate Jim Harbaugh knew about this personally, helped facilitate and pay for Paige Shiver's abortion, which is rich because there is a pretty famous video of Jim Harbaugh saying, "I tell everyone on my staff, if you have a kid, we will help raise it. My wife and I will step in and help raise your child because we are so pro-life." So then, on top of that, Chicago-based law firm Jenner & Block is delivering the findings of an internal investigation into the athletic department to Michigan's Board of Regents. I think it should be happening today, actually. And multiple national sports outlets are reporting that Ward Manuel's exit as athletic director is imminent, with discussions leaning towards, forced retirement and termination. But Ward Manuel has publicly pushed back against these rumors, stating he has had productive conversations with the university and intends to stay. And then Michigan's assistant vice president of public affairs even issued a statement to the Detroit News this week, claiming that there are no formal plans to vote on Ward Manuel's employment. So just to summarize everything that's come out in the past couple weeks, after investigating Matt Weiss's computer crimes, Michigan uncovered the sign stealing operation 9 months before it became public. Then they buried the evidence, scapegoated Chris Partridge to protect their season. Michigan also knew about Moore's inappropriate relationship that he had with his assistant for years, did nothing about it. And Jim Harbaugh personally paid for their abortion. And now Ward Manuel is finally being investigated for his part in all of this, but there is no action being taken, and it's starting to seem more likely than not that he is going to stay on as athletic director. So that's where we are now. So there's a lot to unpack here, but Dad, I want to turn it over to you. Just give me your thoughts on everything that's going on. I mean, you've been stewing on this for 3 years now.
I am not Rob the Rage Machine. We buried that character a few weeks back. I am Rob the prosecutor. I'm going to lay out a very, very detailed case against Michigan. And this is supposed to be father, son, holy Buckeye, so we're going to be too focused on Michigan here, but it is what it is. It comes with the territory when you're an Ohio State
Yeah,
fan.
I love it.
So
So
Sean, if you all,
court is in session,
I'm,
ladies and gentlemen.
there's going to be a lot of good stuff here. So take notes, people. It's very important, I think, to put what you just said in a broader context. The case I'm going to prosecute is a case that Michigan, not to quote Elf, but I am going to quote Elf, is built on a house of lies and smells of meat and cheese. They started with some lies. The lies got progressively bigger over the course of time under Jim Harbaugh, and it culminated in the last couple of years disgrace that you're seeing out of Ann Arbor. So let's take the context setting starts here. When Jim Harbaugh was hired, Sean, I think you and I both said, "Uh-oh, 10-year war, chapter 2," right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was not happy when he was named head coach. I
Yeah,
think
they thought
justifiably
Michigan
nervous.
finally got it right. There's no Fred Flintstone running the sideline, no ill-fitting Rich Rod running a spread that's going to take him 5 to 6 years to get his people in. That's gone. Harbaugh power running, loves the tight end, and when he was at the Niners and at his best, they had baller defenses. Baller, all-time great defenses. Perfect fit for Michigan, right? Okay. So he starts his career 0-3 against Ohio State. His best team in 16 loses to Ohio State. Spot or not, they lost. 2018, again, favored over Ohio State with we've touched on this, one of my favorite plays of all time, the Paris Campbell jet sweep. The score of that game, ladies and gentlemen, Ohio State 62, Michigan 39. And Ohio State took the foot off the gas pedal. Next year, pressure's building. Urban Meyer has retired or left college coaching. Ryan Day is his anointed successor. Ohio State's loaded. Score of that game that year, it's 56-27. A complete manhandling, and Ohio State definitely took their foot off the pedal on that.
Yeah, that game was never close. Like at least
That game was
2018,
never
that game was respectable until the third quarter explosion.
third quarter
2019, we
explosion.
just blew them out of the water.
Yeah, blew their doors off, right? And again, part of the context here is understand when Harbaugh was hired, his desire, I think we all knew, he wasn't going to be at Michigan for. I mean, the fear was he'll stay at Michigan for 20 or 25 years, but we all kind of knew he wants to get back to the NFL, and I don't blame Harbaugh for this. He's a good coach. Well, he wants back in the NFL to win. He wants a ring because that's way Harbaugh's wired, and that's good. That's fine. That's not a knock against Harbaugh. He may be on the spectrum. He may be abundantly weird. He wants back on Sundays, and he wants to win a Super Bowl. That's what he wants. So 2018, 2019, at halftime, my close personal friend Dave Portnoy of that game, what does he tweet?
Fire Harbaugh.
At halftime, he should be not allowed to coach third quarter, right? Reason I bring up that troll is because everybody in blue and gold wanted Harbaugh fired in 2019. Everyone. I also believe, I'll go to my desk grave on this one. I don't believe Ward Manuel and Jim Harbaugh were ever tight. Partially because Harbaugh doesn't like being managed by anybody. The reason he was in Ann Arbor, because he'd singularly pissed off every single person, probably down to the ball boys and the towel boys, the cleaning crew in San Francisco. And ironically, who succeeded him? Chip Kelly, who was one of his assistants, Ryan Day. I don't think that was the cause of any friction between the two, but it's kind of ironic the paths that these guys have traveled. So 2020 comes around. Besides the Big Ten having the dumbest commissioner in the history of commissioning anything, Kevin Warren, who makes a meal out of the season, which one day we will have another podcast on how the Big Ten almost lost to Ohio State, at least for that year. We'll have a podcast about that. Besides doing that, he screws up the entire season. But when it's evident there's going to be a season starting, what does Jim Harbaugh do in a coaches meeting? He pops off to Ryan Day and he says, "Why don't you practice legally?" And Ryan Day responds, "Why don't you coach your team and I'll coach mine?" Then in private or semi-private, he tells his team, "We're going to hang 100 on them this year." 2020, Ohio State's loaded. No, it's COVID. The strangest year, forget sports season, strangest year that any of us is ever going to see. I hope. I hope it's the strangest year. Michigan starts out with Joe Melton at quarterback, who is in the NFL. There's a little bit of hope. Michigan's ranked like 15th or something like that. Ohio State's probably, I think, ranked first or second, and they should be because they're loaded. And they beat Minnesota, and there's some hope. And I remember watching the Big Ten Network, thinking, they might be better than I thought they would be. They proceed, they lose to Indiana. Now, this is a Tom Allen Indiana team. Tom Allen's best Indiana team with a great coaching staff and Michael Penix at quarterback. The best Indiana team they've seen in years. They lose to Indiana, which no one knew how good Indiana could potentially be.
I mean, they didn't just
right?
lose to
That
Indiana. They
was,
got handled. They lost by 17 points.
yeah, but then later they really got smoked by
I
Wisconsin.
remember that. That was one of my favorite hate watches of all time. That Wisconsin just beat the pulp out of them.
It wasn't even close.
49
Like we
to
just
11.
talked about 620. That game was never even close. It was never even debate, and it was comical how bad Michigan was. So Michigan goes into the Ohio State game 2-4.
Well, let's not
And
skip over the
everybody-
fact that following that Wisconsin game, the heat was already on Jim Harbaugh. They go on the road to Piscataway to play Rutgers. That game goes to triple overtime. They need a miracle to knock
Yes.
them off. Rutgers blows the game. They had them beat.
Yes.
If Michigan loses
Good
that
point.
game, Jim Harbaugh's not making it back to Ann Arbor. He is fired.
He's fired on the runway in Piscataway. I would agree with you. Or Newark, most likely, because they probably didn't fly it in out of Piscataway. So, the great point. So, Monday, before the Ohio State game that year, this is really important, folks, because this is where the really big lies start. Michigan says we're going to be, you have your coaches' conference calls and all that stuff on Monday. We're going to be ready for our rival. Tuesday comes. Whoops, we got a COVID outbreak, which is what happens. It happened to Ohio State. But Michigan saw what Ohio State did to Michigan State that year, playing a third and fourth string offensive line. They had no starters. They had guys playing on that line that didn't play again for Ohio State, transferred out, and didn't really play again at Division I level. And they smoked Michigan State that year. That's how good Ohio State was in 19 or 20. We're talking 20. That's how good Ohio State was.
Jim Harbaugh knew that he was walking into another
He knew
60 to
so
nothing
what
game.
did Michigan what did Michigan do Thursday and Friday that week? They had light practice. Now that was technically allowed, but odd, right? If your program's ravaged by COVID such that you can't field a team, you're not having a light practice. You're like, guys, stay inside, get healthy. Maybe we'll play Maryland after this Ohio State game. Maybe we won't. But no, Michigan hasn't practiced Thursday and Friday. No game on Saturday. Because you know why? They didn't want to get smoked by Ohio State. And parenthetically, they thought it would disadvantage Ohio State because Ohio State wouldn't have enough games. It would force Tony Pertitti to change his rule and say, you know what? We're taking Ohio State over Indiana. Okay? So then what happens on Sunday? Rob, why are you so wound up? Michigan had COVID.
They practiced.
Yes. And how do we know? If we didn't know they had a practice, how do we first find out? Jim Harbaugh tweeted about it and said we had a vigorous, energetic, full team practice today. How can you practice on Sunday if you couldn't play the fucking
practice
game
on Friday,
on Saturday?
Practices on Friday, practices on Sunday, but has too many COVID cases to play a game.
Yes, so that's the first lie. The banana peel they're beginning to slip on. The NCAA and the Big Ten have made it clear, we don't want you using COVID as an excuse to manipulate your schedule to avoid matchups and teams that will be problematic for you. It also shows you that the case I'm laying out is for an organization at the heart here is what more Ward Manuel is sitting on an organization that generates close to $200 million a year, that is part of a $1 billion plus organization in the Big Ten and a much larger organization called the NCAA, to which they contribute material value just by their name and image. Any organization of that size would have controls, compliance checks, and security. So Ward Manuel either let his coach make that call that we're too infected with COVID and then knew he was practicing, or just deliberately chose to ignore the evidence the same way Harbaugh did and say, yeah, we're going to get drilled. I'm going to have to hire a new coach, and this disadvantages Ohio State. So it's a win-win-win for me. One of those things happened there, people. Either Ward Manuel's incredibly detached from running the football program, and he's Jim Harbaugh's boss, or he was in on that. And even Michigan fans told me that we didn't want to play Ohio State. Everybody knows that was a fraudulent. So that's 2020. Now, what happens at the end of that year? Really important. Because had Harbaugh played Michigan, or had Michigan played Ohio State that year and lost like 72-17, he's not getting an NFL job. And Ward Manuel probably has to fire him because the aggregate score is going to be average score of the last 3 years is going to be like 65-25, and no NFL team is going to hire him. And that's where, back to one of my earlier points, Harbaugh wants in on Sunday coaching. He wants back to the league. That's what he wants. He wants a coach for the Shield. So Ward Manuel was either in on it or incredibly poor management there. All right. 2021 dawns. Harbaugh goes from 8 million a year to 2 million a year. That's important. And while it may not have been stated in the contract, Ward Manuel made it very clear there ain't a 2022 season for you if you get beat 62-39 again at the end
I
of the
do want to
year.
jump
You
in.
need
Before the 2021 season, Harbaugh was asked about Ohio State, and his tune changed so much. He was talking, a direct quote of his was, "We are going to beat Ohio State or die trying." And like you could tell, he was approaching the game differently. And knowing what we know now, the way he talked about the rivalry leading up to the 2021 season, you can tell he was sitting on something, and he knew they had something brewing, legal or not, that was going to bring down Ohio State.
and so let's continue before we get to that point, which is only like point three in a 5 or 6 point discourse on the rod at Michigan. Now remember, NCAA and the Big Ten's antenna are up because they too feel like Michigan canceled that game on purpose and then kind of flaunted it by practicing on Sunday. 2021 dawns February. COVID recruiting dead period. You can't have recruits on campus. Harbaugh insists. First of all, he tells his staff, how do we know this? Because it was in the NCAA report. Find the line and cross it. Think about that. Find the line and cross it. He said that. So February 2021. And I thought this was some ticky-tack garbage at the time by the NCAA. Now I realize it's, when you put it in context, this is a program doing everything in its power on the wrong side of the line to try and beat Ohio State. They have a recruit in. They go to that famous diner. I think the Brown Jug, it's called, or the Little Brown Jug in Ann Arbor. It's the recruiting coordinator, a recruit, his father, and Harbaugh. 4 people. 3 of the 4 people testified that breakfast happened on the day in question. And when the recruiting coordinator was, how can you be so sure, despite the fact you have a receipt and you submitted an expense report with this breakfast on it? He said, because Coach Harbaugh had a hamburger for breakfast. And I thought that was remarkable and memorable. Okay, so that happened. A month later, Harbaugh doubles down and has 2 recruits and their parents and 2 coaches and himself and the recruiting coordinator out to a lunch. Again, receipts, expense reports, etc. All during this time, Michigan is not letting their compliance staff know when recruits are coming. Now, think about that. One of these recruits is in the weight room and a weight falls on their head. Michigan is going to get sued like you don't like you read about. You've got to let your compliance staff know Michigan isn't doing that. But if your ward manual, someone is signing off on that recruiting coordinator's expense report, somebody is seeing that.
I think that's
They,
the important part about this is that the problem here isn't that this lunch occurred because you're right. It by itself, it's not a big deal. It's Jim Harbaugh ordering a hamburger for breakfast with a recruit. If he was upfront and honest about it, it would have been a small slap on the wrist. It would have been like
yes,
a 6 month probation from the NCAA or something like that. But it's the
correct.
fact that he said it didn't, the lunch never happened at all. And he told the recruits to lie as well to the university. That's the problem.
That's one. Again, the recruiting coordinator pays for that lunch and submits it on his expense report, probably with a Michigan athletic department credit card in both cases. There's a paper trail all over this. Okay? So remember 2020, Harbaugh canceled the Michigan game. Why? Because he didn't want to get 100 hung on him and he knew what was coming. The NCAA and the Big Ten, because that was not cool. You couldn't adjust your schedule to avoid games that you didn't want to play. So the NCAA and the Big Ten have their hackles up. So if Michigan fans want to say they had it out for Harbaugh, yeah, they did. Because he lied in 2020. And now, 2021, he's doing more stuff. Okay? That's what he's doing. So, as you said, Sean, Harbaugh, initially, when confronted with this evidence, he says it never happened. That's his first line of defense. A few weeks later, he says it, I don't recall, because NCAA gave him a chance to say, as you said, Sean, come clean, just be honest. He didn't do that. Then the third time he was approached, he said, I'm not talking to you. Famously said, I'm not talking about this anymore. I'm not talking to anybody. So he's actively stonewalling the investigation now, going out of his way to prevent any more investigation of it. Okay? So now they're going to do anything in their power to get recruits on campus and get them in the Michigan football building as players. They canceled the game the year before. Why? Because what school is going to hire, what NFL team is going to hire Harbaugh, whose last four games ended like 72-17, 56-27, and 62-39? The answer is they're not. His NFL career is hanging on by a thread. All right? A thread, people. So 21 is also when Connor Stallions goes from volunteer to paid. So that's 2021. Aiden Hutchinson's go crazy. They beat Ohio State for the first time. Harbaugh's now 1-4 against Ohio State. 2022 is when the cheating scandal kicks into high gear. All right. Leads into 2023. And I'm not going to read chapter and verse, but it's like, look, for those out there that still think this was a legal thing and cheating's okay, it's not. It's a horse of a different feather. You're not allowed to go on site to recruit, let alone sit on the sidelines at a future opponent's game dressed as a coach from Central Michigan wearing Google spy glasses and a ridiculous getup. You're not allowed to show up as Connor Stallions at a Michigan State game, let alone show up on the opponent's sideline. Every coach knows it. I personally think it's a stupid rule, but it's a rule. But in
The
Jim
part of the
Harbaugh's
stupid
world,
rule that Michigan fans will say is, everyone does. It's like if you happen to notice that, when a quarterback puts his arm up that they're checking to a run, that you can start to, leverage that in your game plan. That's fair. That's fair game. But when your coaching staff has to wear disguises, that's usually a tip off that you are, as Jim Harbaugh told them to do, crossing the line. And that's the part that Michigan fans
100%.
aren't wrapping their head around is that
They can't wrap their head around. Like, so, and this is an analog scandal because Harbaugh is not that smart, in my opinion. Didn't have to happen. You get the game film on your opponents. Your opponents are on TV every weekend. You just record it, and then you have some people in your computer science department break it down sitting alongside someone like Connor Stallions. Then you know. I'm pretty sure that's what Brent Venables and Clemson were doing. And you can do it during the game. Brent Venables supposedly had an army of people doing this for him in Clemson. That's legal. Finally. Yep, Deion Sanders did say about the cheating scandal. Oh, eventually, and others said it. You got to stop the play. Even if you know it's coming, you still have to stop it. Yeah. But when you know damn sure, go back and watch Rutgers against Michigan, 2023, early second half. Rutgers runs a screenplay, and every Michigan defender is on the same side of the field. Sanistrell picks it off. I don't know if he ran it back for a touchdown, and I like Mike Sanistrell as a player. Could have played for Ohio State, played for the wrong side. They knew what was coming, and at halftime, Schiano said it when he was interviewed. The woman who was interviewing from ESPN just couldn't grasp. None of us could grasp what Schiano was saying. He was talking about there's funny business going on out there, and we're going to get it corrected. He wasn't talking about holding or PI or refs calls. He was talking about Michigan stealing signs and knowing what's coming.
And I don't know if it was that play in particular, and I'm not sure if it was Rutgers or Michigan State, but at some point, when this all came out, they were talking in hindsight about their matchup against them, and they had a new play call out of a formation that they had only run the ball out of, and they had a new play call that they put in that week for Michigan, where it was actually, I think, a screen pass. So it might have been this one, but it might have been a different play. And the coach had said there was no reason in the world for Michigan to know that we were going to throw the ball there. And if you watch the replay, it is 10 of the 11 defenders flocking towards the play that the pass that the play was drawn up.
I think we're talking about the same play. I think we are. And if it's not, it's just remarkable, eerie. Okay. So, and that now we find out from the Partridge lawsuit, as you recited, that there's a good chance Ono and Manuel knew in early 2023 that this thing stinks. Partridge is alleging that Ono and Manuel didn't want anybody going on the record. And that's coming back here in a second. There were going to be no notes taken. This was going to be a conversation. Okay? Because there would be no Freedom of Information Act records to go after. I'm coming back to that. So 2023 ends. Michigan, good on you. Probably a good enough team to win the national championship without this cheating thing. I'm going to go on the record on this. I believe what I read in The Athletic, that it's not about stopping the play so much as that was worth at least a field goal to maybe 2 touchdowns a game. I'll go to my grave on it. We'll never know. We'll never know if Rob's right. We'll never know. But it's worth something if you're doing it. Else why do it? At this level. So at the end of 2023, the NCAA fines Michigan 30, that's 3 and a 0 million dollars for the cheating scandal. All right, $30 million. Ward Manuel goes all scorched earth, egregious, offensive, unfair, unjust, out of bounds, never happened, blah, 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 blah. That lasts a few weeks. Pretty sure he and or the trustees consulted their attorneys, and their attorneys said, yeah, we could probably beat this on some kind of technicality, but all this stuff is going to come out and will be a matter of public record. And your principal defense witness, one of them, is going to be Connor Stallions. So do you want to bank on that? Connor Stallions? And so as you, I think, calling out at one point, Partridge became the fall guy and they shut up. But if Michigan was truly, truly innocent, you go to your grave on this one. You fight this thing to the death. If you're Harbaugh and you give a hoot about your reputation, if you really mean never lie, never cheat, never steal, if you really mean that, you're fighting this thing. Now, a few other things to put the nail in my arguments and in the Ward Manuel coffin. I mentioned Matt Weiss. He was, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure he was the brains of the offensive room. Pretty sure. He was doing bad stuff in Baltimore. John will claim, nope, didn't know about it. I recommended him to Jim, bright young mind. Okay. He was downloading data from both Michigan databases on women, alumni, teachers, and current students at Michigan, as well as in an NCAA database focused on female athletes. Manuel's going to claim we had no idea because I believe it was what caught Matt Weiss is he was trying to log into someone else's computer to access that data. So that if his InfoSec people did not catch that, again, you did not the controls, security controls in place on your computers and your laptops that any $200 million organization should have. That's not Ward Manuel's got a lot of evidence of how am I supposed to know about that? Dude, you run a $200 million organization. You're in effect the CEO of that organization. Stop it with the I did not know. Stop it. It doesn't carry any weight. So Matt Weiss is downloading all this data on 3,000 women that he was creeping on. 3,000. Not 30, not 3. 3,000. And the NCAA, and remember when this story broke, Sean, this cheating scandal story broke. The thing that I read in a throwaway line, I think in The Athletic, was the FBI's on site. The FBI was on site at Michigan because of Matt Weiss. They weren't on site because of Sharon Moore or the cheating scandal. So Ward Manuel didn't have Michigan, as a university, did not have any security protocols with their laptops other than login procedures. That is egregious.
And
You can't tell
with
me
both
that.
Matt Weiss's thing and with Jim Harbaugh's thing. With Matt Weiss, you said it. It's like, you know, how stupid can you be to, do this stuff on your work computer? And with Jim Harbaugh, how stupid can you be with keeping a record of the cheating scandal or with the recruiting dinners? Like, there's a paper trail. Why are you lying about it? And I don't think it's a case of stupidity in either of those cases. With the common thread being Ward Manuel, I think it's safe to say both of them
Yes.
knew that with Ward Manuel's leadership, they could get away with anything because he knew exactly the shady stuff that they were doing.
Or he didn't care. Or he didn't care. He didn't care. He didn't care to know. Just as
Which
long as
is
we win,
even,
I don't
as
care.
far as leadership goes, not caring that bad is even worse than just lying
Correct.
about it. And that's the
Correct.
whole
Correct.
problem with Michigan's culture now. It's like Jim Harbaugh was the beginning of the lying and the cheating and the stealing. I mean, that much is clear, and he was the head of all of it. But he left. He left. He got what he wanted. He got his NFL offer, and he got out of there. And that should have been the end of it. If this was just a case of a couple bad eggs, which I can forgive. But they kept Sharon Moore on as an extension
That's
of
right.
this whole
Correct.
disgusting culture. We're going to keep lying and we're going to keep cheating and we're going to keep stealing. And Ward
Yeah.
Manuel, the more that comes out, it seems more likely than not that he's going to keep his job through everything that comes out. And so, Michigan, if you were
Yes.
truly regretful about all of this, why have you not cleaned house? It's been 3 years.
Yeah, so let's continue on. For the lack of compliance, governance, oversight, compass that was going on. Now, the current excerpts in the Wall Street Journal and some other reporting sites, very credible, high standard reporting sites, in addition to Chris Partridge's lawsuit, are highlighting the fact there's a good chance that Ward Manuel knew in 2024 that Sharon Moore was having an affair with his assistant because he said she can't travel with you. Now, we don't know why, but come on, right?
Why
If he
would an
doesn't
athletic director care at all about what a low-level assistant is doing and where she's going?
correct, 100%, that cuts to the heart of the matter. This is a smart man. If all these things that preceded the Sharon Moore thing hadn't happened, you'd be like, okay, well, it's just one instance. Okay? So, I mean, Ward couldn't have been asking the right questions. He couldn't have been asking his staff. Maybe his staff was afraid to say, yeah, something's going on. Maybe his staff was afraid to be rats. Maybe that's possible. But man, If I was asked a direct question about that, I'd probably say, I don't know. They are very close, Ward. They are very close. That's what I'd say. I'd make it very clear Ward, what are you asking me? And then that would be my response. Pretty sure of
Yeah.
that.
I mean, the
So I
excuse
wouldn't want
the excuse out of Michigan of, "Oh, I didn't know," is like everyone has recycled that at 5 times at this point, and it's really I don't know how anyone can put any weight into that anymore. Because either Michigan is the most ineptly led organization in all of sports and business, or everyone is just lying, and I feel like the former is the,
either one of those is not good.
exactly.
Back to the Ono thing. Michigan trustees met Thursday and Friday. You know what, Sean? The reporting on this now, coming from the Detroit Free Press and others, was guess what? They did not get a copy of the report. They heard a debrief of some key findings. Audio. They're determined to bury this report. They do not want the truth to come out. And that, if you're a Michigan fan, whether you keep Ward Manuel or not, and I don't understand for the life of me how you can want to keep Ward Manuel. I don't understand how there's a keep Ward Manuel camp in the Board of Trustees. I don't get it. But the fans, the athletes, are owed a response of why we're keeping them or why we're getting rid of them. And the answers lie in that report, which Michigan, the Board of Trustees, and the acting president, again, he's acting president. He is not the full-time going to do this for the rest of his life president. He's not. They don't want that report to see the light of day. They don't want it going over email because once it does, it's subject to freedom of information requests and they're going to have to release it and everything will come out. But Kyle Whittingham's going to live with this every day the season goes on. And it's going to be about his athletic director and what transpired before, which is why you need to clean house. And at the end of the day, $30 million is the fine that the cheating scandal cost Michigan. 30. This investigation has cost 12. Partridge and Page are suing Michigan. There are going to be other lawsuits. Let's just round up here. It's a $50 million nut that Ward Manuel's leadership has cost you. And if you want to say it's because, well, he won a national championship in basketball, I know I'm going to go down a small rabbit hole here, but it's instructive, okay, and contextual for what happened with the football program. He hired Juwan Howard, a stark raving lunatic, wound tighter than the rubber bands on my childhood prop planes that we would get all in knots to see how far that paper plane. That was Juwan Howard. He threatened Mark Turgeon's life. He threatened the head basketball coach at the University of Wisconsin. This is just off the top of my head what I know he did. He probably threatened other coaches and other fans. And then he punched a Michigan or a Wisconsin assistant who I think, on the look of it, probably could take him and bend him over his leg and break him like an egg. Those weren't fireable offenses in Ward Manuel's world. We're keeping him. We love him. He's a Michigan man. Why did they fire him? Well, then he strangled the basketball trainer who was going a little bit hard on his son, Jet Howard. That was fireable. 4 strikes and you're out at Michigan.
Well, I think
Now,
it was a good question you brought up. Like, clearly, I mean, Word Manual, not only is he kind of a low level morality from a morality standpoint, but also, as you said, he's responsible for $50 million in lawsuits and legal spending, and he's not very good at hiring and retaining good coaches. So he's not good at his job either. So why would they be fighting so hard to keep him?
Why is there a camp that keep Ward Manuel?
He's clearly a liar, and he's clearly not good at his job. So if you follow that question, why would they fight so hard to keep him? This is purely speculative. But if you follow that question long enough, it might lead you to the fact that there's even more crimes going on at Michigan that we don't know about that goes up to an even higher level that he knows about that they don't want getting out. I mean, just it's again purely speculative. I don't know anything, but if you follow that strand far enough, and given what we've seen out of Michigan over the past 5 years at this point, it's not that far of a fetch.
No, and I agree with you. So, and in terms of, I guess the only camp, the keep Ward Manual camp can be because, well, he won 2 national championships in 2 of our biggest sports, and the hockey team's good and all this stuff. You've had your own crisis in hockey under his watch. Getting Dusty May was a bit of luck because Ohio State was looking at Dusty May and they decided to go cheap and go with Diebler, the acting coach, and try and build the program organically. I'm not saying that was a better decision than hiring Dusty May, but he lucked into Dusty May because he had to fire his first choice, Juwan Howard. It didn't work. He got Dusty May, fell into his lap. Kyle Whittingham fell into his lap, even in a bigger way. It's like he parachuted in Ann Arbor with the game ball. They got so lucky with Kyle Whittingham.
Yeah, like it doesn't take a sharp eye or a good interviewer to know that Dusty May is a good basketball coach or Kyle Whittingham is a good football coach. Like it's the like any athletic director, if you're behind the University of Michigan, could have made those hires.
Correct. That Paige could have made him. She would have, and
Yep.
she would have. So that I'm gonna park it here. So the Juwan Howard situation is illustrative about how far you have to go to get Ward Manuel's attention. That's why it's relevant. He gave that dude 4 strikes at that I'm aware of off the top of my head. He gave Harbaugh, who was doing a lot more devious things, multiple strikes, or didn't know about it and didn't care. He doesn't care about the 3,000 women that Matt Weiss was creeping on. And then the last point I'm going to close on, Ward Manuel, now this is a speculative on my part, but given his character and his willingness to not look for the obvious, he played for Schembechler. In, I believe it was 22, Michigan settled a lawsuit for $495 million, 1,500 victims of the football trainer who worked for Coach Bo Schembechler. And I'd like to see I'd like to see a timeline of those 1,500 players, because I'm pretty sure a lot of them overlap with Ward Manuel's time there. And I don't believe for 1 second, not one second, and I could be swayed with evidence, I have none, that Ward Manuel didn't know what was going on with this trainer. I don't believe it. And that's where the character, in my opinion, that's where his kind of massaging of the truth, this gray area, this foggy notion of moral accountability and complicity, lies of omission or commission, starts with him and the Michigan athletic program. You can trace it back to that, and it's not too hard to figure out. You can get the names of those 1,500 victims and look at when they played with Michigan, figure out when Ward did. And man, if there's a great deal of concentric circle overlapping, there you go. And that's one of those things, Sean, that might be in this report.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, like maybe it didn't stop with Bo. I mean, because again, I mean, we don't I don't want to be that kind of podcast where we speculate that far, but the way that Michigan has handled their program, it leaves a lot up for debate. And the last point I want to close with is like it's really at the end of the day, it's the hypocrisy that upsets me the most, because the Michigan fans and the players, they weren't responsible for the sign stealing scandal, and they didn't victimize thousands of female undergrads. So if the fans and the people around Michigan were to admit that this is all messed up, that it was a few bad eggs and we need to get them out of there and clean house, if they could admit that the program did something wrong and they need to be held accountable, I wouldn't be that fired up about this. I could say it's a Jim Harbaugh problem. He's the one that lacks morals, and Ward Manuel is the one that's willing to win at any cost. But it's still every man, woman, and child that's associated with this program continues to defend them tooth and nail. They still believe they've done no wrong, will never do any wrong, and they are still a superior breed to every program across the country. And that's what drives me so insane. And what I thought would be fun to kind of maybe close a little bit on is to revisit some of the Michigan quotes from Ohio State's scandal back in 2010 when, again, if you revisit that, Jim Tressel he lied to the NCAA at the end of the day. And I don't recall very many Ohio State fans pounding their chest saying that Jim Tressel did absolutely nothing wrong and he should have stayed as the head coach. So keep that in mind, but I wanted to revisit some Michigan quotes from around this time. Bob Wojnowski from the Detroit News, he still works there today. He was swallowed by arrogance, stubbornness, and hypocrisy. Jim Tressel was an iconic coach, but it's clear now his integrity was a closely guarded front. Does the tattoo scandal taint Tressel's 106-22 record and 7 Big Ten titles? Yes, it absolutely does. Our friend Desmond Howard. I'm always happy, like anyone should be, to see anyone who cheats the system get caught and get out of the game. Ohio State's whole image has been tarnished. Sam Webb, Michigan Insider. The reality is that Ohio State knew they had an eligibility crisis before the Sugar Bowl. Instead of acting with integrity and forcing compliance, the head coach and administration chose to pocket the email alerts, cover up the truth, and field an ineligible roster against Arkansas. It wasn't just a failure of a few players, it was a systemic, institutional dishonesty designed to protect winning at all costs. And finally, Charles Woodson, which I think seems particularly applicable to the current situation at Michigan. When you build an image on being completely perfect and righteous, the fall is always going to be a lot harder when the truth comes to light. And there's been a lot of truth coming out about Michigan. Who knows how much more will be. But the more they try to fight it, more they try to dig their heels in, say they did nothing wrong, and keep Ward Manuel around, the uglier I feel like this is ultimately going to get when it's all said and done.
2 points to add on to that. I abhor hypocrisy. I was one of the first people that said Tressel's probably got to go. In the absence of a full-throated defense by the president that pointed to the sum of his achievements and not this egregious mistake he made by lying to the Ohio State administration and lying to the NCAA, if they'd done that, Tressel would still be around because they would have been transparent about it. Okay? So I abhor hypocrisy, and that's why I'm spending time on this. Yeah, it helps that it's Michigan, but if this was at Wisconsin, I'd be doing the same thing. I'm convinced of that. Frankly, if this was at Ohio State, God forbid, I'd be doing the same
Well,
thing.
it's why we got all fired up about Texas Tech, too, claiming that they were doing all this stuff for Brendan Sorsby's best interest, when in reality, it was just so they could get him on the football field. They didn't care.
He's got a good right
idea.
arm. Let's get him on the field. Yeah, and then the last thing I'm going to say is we stopped the toll, the Ward Manuel toll at $50 million, but the toll is going to get higher. It's not going down. There are, I believe, the total was 250 women on which Matt Weiss had illicit images. There is a significant lawsuit coming from those 250 women. It's going to be on the order of a $400, $500 million lawsuit. That's what it's going to be. I'm not a lawyer, although I'm trying out for one here. So the Ward Manuel toll, Michigan fans, is going to be very high. And I don't understand how there can be two camps around this. He's incompetent at best, and sleazy and dirty and smarmy and fat at worst. I rest my case.
Yeah, I think that's enough said. I think you did a really great job of laying out that timeline and showing that it's not just, Michigan stole some signs and we're making a big deal out of it. It's been a pattern of lying, and they continue to do it to this day. And until Ward Manuel and all of leadership is out of there, it's really hard to take that program seriously.
Amen. Let's talk some coaches.
Yeah. ESPN put out a list of their top 10 college football head coaches for the 2026 season. And as most content that comes out of ESPN, it's not a great list. So I wanted to run through it with you real quick and get your thoughts on it, because I'm sure we can come up with a better list ourselves. So I guess it was all of the college football personalities at ESPN ranked their 10 head coaches. So we have the top 10 and then a few others that received votes. So I'll just run through it real quick and get your thoughts. Number 1 was Curt Cignetti. Feel like that's pretty easy. 2 Kirby Smart, 3 Ryan Day, 4 Marcus Freeman, and 5 Dan Lanning. I feel like I'm pretty happy with that top 5. I feel like Curt Cignetti is a clear 1. You can already argue Kirby or Ryan 2 or 3, and then you can argue Marcus Freeman or Dan Lanning 4 or 5, I think. But in some order, I feel like that's your top 5 head coaches. I don't have a problem with the top 5. It's after this where I think it gets a little bit messy. 6 was Steve Sarkisian, 7 Lane Kiffin, 8 Mike Elko from Texas A&M, 9 Kyle Whittingham, and then tied for 10th was Mario Cristobal and Kalen DeBoer. And then the other coaches receiving votes was Dabo Sweeney, Matt Campbell, Rhett Lashley at SMU, Eric Morris, who just is at Oklahoma State from North Texas, Kalani Sitake at BYU, Kenny Dillingham, Willie Fritz at Houston, and Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. So that's essentially, in ESPN's eyes, your top 20 college football head coaches. So I know I had a couple of head coaches on this list that I think are way too high, but I'll pass it back over to you first. Did anyone stand out to you as too high on this list?
Yeah, I'd say I'd have a top 4. Cignetti, Kirby, and Ryan, 1, 2, 3. Fine, do it. That's fine. The whole list smacks to me of recency bias because I would not have Marcus Freeman at 4. I mean, what are you ranking here? Potential, hotness, like what are we doing here? Like, am I hiring a coach to be there for 20 years? Is it a career achievement thing? All these rankings, whether it's quarterbacks, stadiums, coaches, they're all kind of weird to me, but I know it's summer and we got to fill our content bucket. So we're going to come up with a ranking of coaches. Marcus is too high at 4. That'd be the one call out. He's too high. I don't like Lane Kiffin at all, but I'm not so sure he should be in front of Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, that's fair, because at least Lane Kiffin is one in different places, and I do think Marcus Freeman's getting a lot of credit for, that run to the national championship, which at the end of the day, that kind of boiled down to a win over James Franklin and Penn State with Drew Aller throwing across his body late in the fourth quarter in his own territory. So I feel like maybe he is getting a little too much credit for that. 2 coaches that to me stuck out as way too high. First one might be controversial, but Steve Sarkisian at Texas. And I get that he gets a lot of credit.
Not controversial.
Okay, well, thank you. I get that he's kind of the one that's brought Texas back, but at the end of the day, I mean, it did take him until his 3rd year to bring Texas back. He was 13-12 in his first 2 seasons there, but he was also very average at Washington and USC. He was 46-35 combined at those 2 schools. And yes, I see that he's won 80% of his games over the past 3 seasons, but he still has very little to show for that success. 0 SEC titles, 0 national championship appearances, and 0 Heisman finalists. So I don't know if 3 years of Texas being a marginal top 10 team is enough of a resume to have him all the way up there as one of the premier coaches in college football. Great play caller, probably one of the 5 best in college football, but only when things are going really well. Like when his team has the advantages in the trenches, they're a great offense. But when he plays college football's best, and college football's best are always built from the outside in, he struggles. But listen, he's played Georgia and Ohio State 5 times in the past 2 seasons. In those 5 games, the great Steve Sarkisian and his offense has averaged 13 points a game, 320 yards per game, and has never broken 20 points or 400 total yards in any of those 5 games. So, yeah, Texas has been dominating teams they're better than, but against college football's best, he hasn't done anything against them. So does that sound like anyone that we know, great against teams he's better than, but struggles against the elite? Like a certain bald-headed coach in Blacksburg?
Yep.
Yeah, so if he struggles that much against Ohio State and Georgia, I can only imagine the success he would have against, Miami or Notre Dame or Oregon. So I feel like he's getting a little bit too much credit when in reality he hasn't won that much. And the other one that I think is too high, to your point about what exactly has he done in recency bias, is Mike Elko. He had 3 good years with Duke, went 24-14, and then in his first and only year at Texas A&M, he went 11-2. It was a good year, but if you look a little bit closer at last year, he had a great win in September against Notre Dame. But at the end of the day, that they really shouldn't have won that game because their offensive line literally tackled 2 Notre Dame defensive linemen on their game-winning touchdown. It should have been a flag, and that should have been called back. And after that game, they didn't beat a single team worth a damn. They got dominated by Texas to close out their regular season, and then they lost at home in Miami in the CFP where they only put up 3 points. And not to mention barely sneaking by South Carolina, Arkansas, and Auburn last year by a combined 10 points. I mean, those three teams had a combined 11 wins. So I think you're right about recency bias. To put some of these coaches up here, you need to show me a little bit more evidence to rank a coach as, the sixth or seventh best in college football. If we're really going to put that much stock in one season, then, in 2023, Mike Norvell at Florida State would have been a consensus top 5 coach in college football. But now that we've gotten a little bit more evidence on him, I mean, look at him. He's, if he loses 2 games in September this year, he's going to be fired, and no other Power 4 team is going to touch him. It can fall apart quickly. So I think you're right about recency bias.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. Is the Texas Tech coach on this list?
No, he's not.
There you go. Recency bias. He's arguably had a better career at his school in Texas than Elko. If for only one reason, that he's been there a little bit longer, how can Elko be ahead of him?
Yeah, it doesn't make
Makes no
sense.
sense.
Like, there's a few of these coaches also, like Kenny Dillingham at the end of the day has just had one good season at Arizona State. The dude at Vanderbilt, he had a really nice season last year on the back of Diego Pavia. Other than that, he's 16-33 at Vanderbilt. And then Eric Morris at Oklahoma State now. Like, he had a really good year at North Texas last year, but he's 22-16 at North Texas outside of last year. So it's just a lot of these guys had one great season, and now all of a sudden they're going to pass guys like James Franklin and Lincoln Riley. And I think the one that's particularly egregious to leave off is Lincoln Riley. And I get that maybe he hasn't brought USC to the levels that a lot of people have maybe expected him to, but at the end of the day, he's 90-28 overall across USC and Oklahoma. He has 5 10-plus win seasons to his name. He's never had a losing record as head coach, and he's finished ranked in 7 of his 9 seasons as head coach. And people forget what USC was before Lincoln Riley took over. In the 12 seasons between Pete Carroll and Lincoln Riley, USC was winning 63% of their games. They went through 3 different regimes, and they went 4-8 the year before Lincoln Riley took over. So the fact that he is behind these kind of one-hit wonders, like you said, I think is really egregious. James Franklin, too. I mean, we've talked at length about how underrated of a coach he was. If this list was put together last year with the expectations Penn State had, James Franklin would have been a consensus top 10 coach. And now he has one bad season, and he's not even a top 20 head coach. I mean, I mark my words, Virginia Tech is going to win 9 or 10 games this year. I think they're going to be in the ACC championship, and I don't think they'll make the CFP, but we will be talking about Virginia Tech and their playoff hopes in the month of November, and this is a program that's been dead for 15 years. I'll eat my words if I'm wrong, but that jump that they will make this year is all going to be because of James Franklin. So I just think, yeah, the whole list stinks of recency bias, to your point.
Coach that I think is too low on this. I actually think Dan Lanning's a little too low. I don't understand why he wouldn't be number 4. He has Oregon in a place that Cristobal didn't quite have it. He's in the playoffs every year, or knocking on the door and having a banger with, a Michael Penix Washington team. So to not have Lanning at 4, he should be ahead of Marcus Freeman. And I don't think you're watching enough college football and voting correctly if you have Freeman over him. And he plays a tougher schedule every year than Marcus Freeman does.
Yeah, good point.
So I'd say the one coach that's egregiously too low is Dabo. And in my old age, I've come to respect him. The knock on Dabo, and it's the only knock you can make, is he's a little stubborn and he hasn't adjusted to NIL and the transfer portal for reasonable reasons. He just doesn't like the direction of the sport. And he's been pretty, lawyerly in his prosecution of tampering against, say, Ole Miss. And he has 2 national championships. And you're elevating Marcus Freeman because he played for one.
Well, yeah, I think that's why this list is a little silly, is because, like, with Dabo Swinney, if I'm in Ohio State or I'm a Georgia or I'm a Notre Dame and I'm trying to win a national championship, I don't want Dabo Swinney near my program. But if I'm like a Virginia Tech that's trying to rejuvenate themselves, or like an up-and-coming program that's trying to get on the map.
Florida State?
Yeah, Florida State. Like, I think Dabo Swinney would get Florida State back to being in the top 25 overnight. So that's why, anything, hiring a college football head coach is very nuanced. So I think just being like generating a list like this is kind of nonsense. When someone like Dabo Swinney, I think would be a great fit for like a Florida State, but if he ever came within 100 miles of Ohio State, I'd have to do something about that.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
And
Anything else on coaches?
I just wanted to shout out Jed Fish at Washington. I think is another guy
Yes,
that
100%. 100%.
yeah, missing from this list. Like again, we talk about recency bias with some of these head coaches, but Jed Fish, he brought Arizona from 1-11 to 10-3 in 3 seasons. He's building Washington back up after they, the draft and the portal left them desolate when Kalen DeBoer left them. And he's a really, I
Yes.
mentioned Steve Sarkisian's one of the 5 best play callers in college football. Jed Fish is in that list. And unlike Steve Sarkisian, he's not really a one-trick pony. His offenses are always well balanced and can win games in multiple ways. So I think Jed Fish, I mean, I'm not surprised he's not on this list. I just think he deserves to be.
Yeah, I'd agree. Jed Fish should be on the list. The one call out I'll make, because Stuart Mandel and The Athletic kind of dumped on him this week in his mailbag column, is PJ Fleck. I'm not saying PJ Fleck's second coming of Saban. Great alliteration there on my part. But he doesn't lose. He does a lot with less. It's hard to be at 10 wins if you're Minnesota. And Stewart's point is, he just doesn't coach his team up, I think is not a good argument, because that's all he can do to get to 7, 8, 9, 10 wins. He's coaching his team up because their NIL game is bad.
If you want evidence of how hard it is to like win as much as he has at Minnesota, especially the NIL era, just look at how hard Wisconsin's had it since really the NIL era began. They've been struggling to get back to a bowl game, and PJ Fleck has
Yeah.
kept Minnesota steady.
Yeah, he's kept them steady, and he hasn't. I don't think he's had the horrendous injury luck that Fickles had in Madison. But man, he wins, and he's probably more consistent than Burt is at Illinois, and he's been more consistent, as consistent as Iowa, and more consistent than Wisconsin. And for him to get dumped on, Cignetti's ruined it for everybody that doesn't get in the playoff. I understand that, but the people in Bloomington made a significant NIL commitment. And they also picked maybe a generational coaching talent. Two good things. PJ's a good coach. Not going to get a lot of love for this list, but that's, again, because you're just quickly dismissive. Oh, I don't see him playing for the playoff. Yeah, but you don't see him doing what Beamer did at South Carolina, last year. You don't see that. You don't see the 24 Vanderbilt team that Clark Lee had.
No, that's a good point. I do think like with what Cignetti's done, it has ruined how we kind of evaluate some of these coaches. Like you said, if you don't see them in the playoff, you assume they're a failure. But honestly, all of those coaches you mentioned, like PJ Fleck and Brett Bielema, Kirk Ferentz, even Greg Schiano at Rutgers, if I'm just building up a random program and I want to get them to be a winning top 25 caliber team as soon as possible, honestly, I would probably lean with one of these head coaches who I've seen do it for a really long time in different conditions rather than a Mike Elko or a Eric Morris, who I've only seen it do it one time. So I just think the more I think about it, the more egregious some of these coaching rankings on this list is, because we really have lost the value of just consistency.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think
100%.
the last coach I want to talk about, who I think is way too low on this list, I mean, at least he's in it, is Kalani Sitake at BYU. I mean, he's been their head coach for over 10 years now, but he's only become better in the NIL era. And I think it's important we really evaluate these coaches in the NIL era lens. He's won 75% of his games since 2021. He has 4 10-plus win seasons, and the past 2 seasons he's 11-2 and 12-2, knocking on the door of the playoff both years. And he's really turned BYU into one of the most consistent programs in the country, again, in the era of NIL, which shouldn't be benefiting a school like BYU. So I just think it's crazy. He's all the way down, like outside the top 15 on this list, again, behind some of these coaches that are just really hanging on by one season. Like if I'm building up a program, Kalani Sitake's going to be near the top of the list of coaches I want.
Preach or preach.
Great. Well, I think Yeah, I think we can put a bow on that unless you had any other final coaching thoughts.
Nope. No, I think you summed it up well.
Cool. So before we wrap this show up, I did just have a few news headlines from across the country I wanted to touch on. So just feel free to jump in if you have thoughts on any of these. But the first one, I've talked a little bit about David Gabriel Georges, that 5-star running back we're trying to get in the next recruiting class. He announced his commitment date. He's going to be announcing Wednesday of this week at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. And his uncle, who, by the way, just seems like a real handful. He's a blabbermouth, like major LeVar Ball vibes. So if we don't get DGG, I think the silver lining will be that, at least we don't have to have his uncle around because he seems like a handful. But he did say that this decision is his final one. There will be no more negotiation or further recruitment after this decision is made. They wouldn't be the first one to say that and then back up and recommit somewhere. But the vibe does seem to be that this is the decision. So really hoping we can bring DGG home and build a pretty scary offense next year.
Agree. You bring up whether it's the balls or the thing with Legend Bay, this thing has a little bit of kind of the vibey helicopter family going on, and I get it. Knoxville's probably a great place, great vibe there, but dude, be honest. Do you want to win a Heisman Trophy and do you want to win national championships? Because you can do both in Columbus. You are not going to do both in Knoxville.
Yeah, I mean, if he goes to Ohio State, he might be taking a little discount compared to what Tennessee is offering him. But yeah, if you want to play on the biggest stage, there's only one place to go. And I will say that there's, the Cleveland Browns have a Tennessee running back and an Ohio State running back that were both rookies last year. And it's the Ohio State running back and Quinshon Judkins that gets 80% of their snaps when he's healthy. So the proof is in the pudding. I also wanted to shout out Rutgers, another Rutgers shout out for us. But they got a big recruitment update. They flipped 4-star running back Aiden Gibson from Penn State. He was a 2027 running back, but he reclassified to 2026, so he will play this season, and he's already on campus at Rutgers. He's a consensus 4-star across all the recruiting databases, a top 20 running back, according to On3 and 24/7, out of Woodruff, South Carolina, which is just outside of Greenville, not too far away from you, Dad. But he's a bigger, more contact-seeking running back, which I think complements Antoine Raymond really well because he's the smaller, shiftier back. So I think there's a real chance that we see Aiden Gibson get some significant play time this year because he does have the frame to do it and have an impact his freshman year at 6'1", 215. So I think that this could give Rutgers a big boost. And who knows, Rutgers' offense could actually be a little bit of a handful this year.
Are you and your RU call outs? I didn't know you like Carter so much.
Hey, Carter and Phil, we got some we
Yeah,
got multiple
true,
Rutgers
true.
fans here listening. Um, Another quick update, the ACC implemented a new tiebreaker policy after last year's mess that had Duke in the title over Miami. This one is essentially just prioritizing head-to-head outcomes, and when the head-to-head outcome cannot separate the tied teams, the ACC said they'll go with the strongest overall body of work will earn the opportunity to compete for the ACC championship. So the exact formula isn't clear, but sounds like they are more so incorporating quality of your conference opponents. So ACC just cleaning up their tiebreaker policy. And then the NCAA, they opened an inquiry into Cincinnati over, can't believe we're saying his name again, but the Brendan Sorsby gambling fiasco. They're investigating to see what Cincinnati, their coaching staff, and their administration knew about Sorsby's gambling habits when he was their starter during the 2024 and 25 seasons. So, Cincinnati could face significant punishments if the NCAA finds that since he did know about the gambling and did nothing about it, like we're talking vacation wins, scholarship reductions. But knowing the NCAA, this is going to take a while, so we'll probably hear an update on this in like 2028.
Probably. You know me, I could be naive about things. I don't think Cincinnati they're going to find anything, but that is speculative and just a wild ass guess on my part because why would you risk that? But then the flip side is how could you not know? We just went through an hour legislating and arguing and presenting our case to the jury about how Ward Manuel had to know. So yeah, I get that side too. I just don't know why you would play a player that has that kind of problem if you knew about it.
I mean, I'm probably in the other boat. Like, I find it hard to believe that he was betting $90,000 and like his teammates didn't know about it and the coaching staff got wind. So, but it might be hard to prove how much they exactly knew. So, again, we'll see. Another quick update out of actually Florida State, who we just mentioned. Tom Herman is joining their staff. His official role is assistant to the head coach. I think it's interesting to see such a late addition to a coaching staff. And I was reading what some like Florida State fans and beat writers were speculating, and it seems like a lot of Florida State fans are almost thinking they're bringing Tom Herman in as kind of an interim coach in waiting. Because, like we mentioned, if Mike Norvell does not have a very long leash, if he loses a couple games in September, there's a really real chance that he gets fired early. So the thinking is, if this season doesn't kind of go well to early, they at least now bring in someone that has head coaching experience who can maybe right the ship and who knows, maybe even be the future head coach because, Tom Herman, again, he couldn't bring Texas back, but he isn't a bad head coach. And if Florida State's just trying to get back to above 500, get into the top 25 and, maybe compete for a college football playoff every few years, I think Tom Herman can get him back there.
Yeah, Tom Herman's a good coach. There's no he had a decent run at Texas. They were never horrible. They were, I think Texas ran out of patience with 9-3 seasons, and he was by and large, Michigan, the championship game against Michigan State and the Michigan State loss in 2015, he's a great play caller. He's a great offensive mind. Don't ask him to coach with Zach Smith. May not be doing backflips over the results, but he's going to win. So if that's the case, smart play by the folks in Tallahassee.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I think Florida State's actually going to be one of the most interesting teams to watch this year because, because it is the ACC, I wouldn't be shocked to see Florida State get back to 10-2. But based off of what we've seen out of them the past couple seasons, I think another 2-10 season is, honestly just as likely. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of Tallahassee this year. Final quick updates. The CW network is getting more into the broadcast game for college football. They unveiled a 50-game regular season schedule across the ACC, Pac-12, and Mountain West. So if you're interested in those conferences and watching those teams, you might have to make sure you have the CW network. And a reminder for who's in the new Pac-12 because they had some revamping. It's Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, Oregon State, San Diego State, Texas State, Utah State, and Washington State. 8 state schools. And then UTEP, North Dakota State, and Northern Illinois joined the Mountain West this year after Boise, Fresno State, Colorado State, San Diego State, and Utah State all left for the Pac-12. So those are the conferences that are going to be on the CW network this year. And then my final quick update, we could honestly have a whole other topic conversation about this, but I want to keep it brief. Todd McShay, who I really disdain and generally do not like his content. He unveiled his top 10 college quarterbacks for 2026. And I'm not sure if this was for like the 2026 college season or if these were for the like early rankings for the 2027 draft. He is a draft analyst predominantly, so I would imagine it's for the draft. But either way you look at it, it's a abhorrent list. Just a few highlights that I saw. He had Lenora Sellers at number 2, Sam Levitt at number 3, and Julian Sayin all the way down at number 9. I'm starting to relish in all the hate that Julian Sayin's getting because even Josh Pate, he brought up his point about people not thinking Julian Sayin is tough or is a winner. He brought it up again on his podcast, being like, "Oh, it's not me saying it. I'm hearing it from players and coaches across the country." So I'm just at this point, I'm not getting upset about it. I'm starting to love the hate because it's going to be so sweet when Julian Sayin shuts them all up with a 4,000-yard season and is back in New York in December.
I agree. I mean, I think these takes are, again, we talked about recency bias. I don't understand the rankings. I think recency bias evokes everything. That'll be one thing I'm happy. You said you'd eat crow on Franklin. I'm happy to eat crow. Well, no, I won't be happy. But if it turns out Julian Sayin's not that good, but because he throws for 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns and Ohio State's playing for a national championship game, I'll eat crow then. If he's not tough, or there are better quarterbacks, or he turns out not to be a great crow, I'll eat crow all day. But I like my chances of being right more so than I do like Todd McShay. I know you don't, but I like my chances of being right rather than Josh bald-headed Pate and Todd McVay.
Yeah.
I know we haven't
So
been wrong too much on this yet, so I hope that stays up. But I think we can wrap up our topics for the day. Any final thoughts or words before we get into the post game spread?
yeah, I wanted you mentioned being right, so let's call it out. I think we did a pretty good job on our World Cup predictions. I know my Final Four was France, Spain, um, U.S., and who was the four? And England. So I had four teams. I did say the U.S. was going to have to beat Argentina probably to get to the Final Four. So if I had not been so ebullient and enthusiastic, again, good alliteration, Rob, in my love for the U.S. men's national team, um, we might, I would have had Argentina, would have all four right. So I think we did a good job on the other type of football. Since this is the silly season with in terms of lists, and everybody also came out with rankings of their top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. But most people agree with us when we said we had top five were some combination of Stafford, Burrow, Lamar, Josh Allen, and Mahomes. That's generally most people have that top five. So again, shout out to us because we were earlier to the table and the party with any of that. The one thing I did want to note when we talked about quarterbacks, we were talking about talent evaluation. You were really, really passionate about building a team. And, you could have, you didn't say this, but you could have Jesus as your quarterback. He can't win if he's captaining a leaky boat. He's got to be on a good, must build the roster. And we cited those five quarterbacks as sort of being the five guys you could drop down into the New York Jets or so down double digits. Who do you want? One of those five guys, could make the Jets win or could come back and win those games consistently, not just once in a blue moon, blind squirrel finds a nut type of situations. And my point was Matthew Stafford was drafted in 2009. When I said that, you quickly, so I want to call you out. You quickly were able to do the math in your head and saying, well, 17 years of drafts, 32 teams, everybody having a first round draft pick. That's somewhere around 550 draft picks, and we're talking about five quarterbacks. That's less than 1%. And then you're right. Around the world, every league, period, end of statement, has a hard time with talent evaluation, whether it's the English Premier League, whether it's baseball, football, basketball. And what I read that supports your claim of 1%. I mean, besides the fact that the data we were reciting to people is the fact that 6%, less than 6% of NBA draft picks have made a significant contribution to the team that drafted them. Okay, less than 6%. And I read that in an article on ESPN to give proper credit. And they were talking about it was a broader topic of how to fix U.S. men's national team. And their point was because every 4 years, these articles come out about how to fix youth soccer in the U.S., which is such a big overarching topic and nothing ever really changes. And Alexei Lalas is an idiot. It is broke. But his point is it's mostly you need to figure out a better way to identify talent and get more soccer players in the pool. And that is a challenge because if you look at the vagaries of the France team, of Morocco, of England, of the US, of Argentina, there's so many of these players could have played for another country and they just chose to play for England or they chose to play for France or they chose to, like Hakimi at Morocco, they chose to play for Morocco. And so his point was everybody, like, look at the New York Mets this year. They stink. It's talent evaluation, folks. Always has been and always will be. And it's hard. And the teams that win in the NFL have realized that, and they build a roster. They know they got 53 cracked bites at the apple. We're going to have the best 53 players we can find, and we know we're going to miss on a few. But that's why we're going to have multiple draft picks. And when we know there's a sure thing, like an A.J. Brown trade, we're going to go do it. Or signing Saquon Barkley, we're going to go do that because it's a sure thing, man. And they're convinced. So I wanted to call you out because you nailed it. 1%. And all these people on ESPN, Colin Cowherd are going to bang the table, get a franchise quarterback, do whatever you need to trade up. You have 1% chance you're going to get that right. So Sean's right. This podcast rocks. I'm done with tooting our own horn, but it's a big horn. I had to toot it.
All right. I love it. Thanks for the shout out. That sounds great. So I think we're ready to wrap this up and get into the post game spread where we each share something we are, eating, drinking, watching, reading, just overall enjoying that we want to share with each other and our listeners. So, Dad, what are you enjoying this week?
Um, a couple things. A song I heard on the radio the other day, and I could call it maybe an oldie but a goodie. And we've talked a little bit. We're going to sound like a country music show, but it's Margo Price. I put a Hurtin on the bottle. It's just a great song, definitely country tinged, if not outright country. The words tell you all you need to know. It's about the end of a relationship, and that's why she's putting a Hurtin on a bottle. So it's a great song. And, even if you don't like country, because I don't think you're going to hear that song much on country music radio, because for some reason it's not the type of country artist they play. Look it up. It's going to be tagged, and you'll be able to find it in our podcast. It's a great song. And if you don't like it, no skin off my teeth. It's 4 minutes time wasted, but I think you'll enjoy the song. The other thing I'm watching, streaming, your mom and I finished The Bear this week. And I realize for some people that show can get a little jangly, can be a little tense, can be a little loud. But this season, final season of The Bear, and I'm very sad to see it go because it's been my favorite show on TV. I got a beef with the Emmy body that continuously puts this as a comedy. This year it did qualify in my book as a comedy. It starts out a little rough because of they're ginning up the tension because it looks like things are going to go bad at the restaurant. But if you can't see the growth in Richie and just how he's really come from being a loud, obnoxious, combative, angry person to just a lovely human being trying to embrace the world and trying to figure out when the world loves him back that it's okay to receive that love. I love the show, and it's about the human condition and people struggling to make sense of this crazy thing called life and trying to come out the other side of it better people with better people and a team that works together in harmony. There's a lot of lessons there. I just love The Bear. Can't say enough about it. And so I'm saying The Bear, Margo Price, over and out.
Cool. Love it. Thank you for that. I don't have too much on my end. It was week before was spent in New Jersey, was getting back to normalcy this week. So, and just enjoying the nice weather. So I don't have too much anything new on my end to report, but did have an apparel update. I know I'm not a big, sports jersey guy. I don't own any non-Ohio State jerseys, but they are my game day apparel of choice. So I take them very seriously. I think I mentioned in a previous episode, I have, my white number 1 Justin Fields jersey, my number 2 red Chris Olave jersey. That are my go-tos for game day. But I wanted to add to my collection. I wanted to get a Jeremiah Smith jersey before he's gone because I want to relish every moment he's wearing scarlet and gray. He's obviously going to shatter all the career Ohio State receiving records this year, but I think he's going to shatter a lot of single-season records as well. I think a Heisman is really on his plate this year. So I wanted to get a Jeremiah Smith jersey, but I'm very particular about them. I need stitched jerseys. I want them to look and feel authentic. So I hate like the replica jerseys you can get through like the Ohio State store or through Fanatics. And those pressed on names and numbers. So I have to go the knockoff route. So I got a jersey from this place called Neb Sport, N-E-B. So if anyone's looking for any, apparel or merch ahead of football season, check out this website because it was $80 and it's great material. I got the black number 4 and stitched jerseys, and it's got the new heritage stripes. So I'm excited. We'll see how long I can wear it because I am a little superstitious. So if I throw it on and Ohio State has a bad couple of drives, I might need to retire it. But yeah, that's the most exciting thing going on in my life right now is my new Ohio State jersey.
Well, let me ask you this, since we talked tailgate stuff. Um, I started the week with you last week, picking you up at 106-degree temperatures in Philadelphia, and we got to go to Fiorella, which was on my bucket list place to visit. Love that place. I more so love the company I was with. You're a lovely fiance and yourself. Um, and then I went to White House Subs on Saturday when we flew back. What'd you think of White House?
Oh, right. So I will say, Autumn got the Italian at White House Subs. She said it was the best Italian she's had in her life. I was really jonesing for a Philly cheesesteak, so I got that, and I was a little bit disappointed because I was kind of expecting like an authentic Philly like you would get from like Geno's.
Interesting. I would have said, Sean, never having been to White House, I would have said, I know mom is a big fan of their cheesesteaks. I would have said, don't do cheesesteak. Do like either the Italian, which is what I got. It lasted me till Wednesday of this week, or like a turkey sub with all the fixins. That it was spectacularly good. So I banged out two bucket list food items for me. So I was very happy with the week on top of getting to see my two sons. So that's all I got.
Cool. So I think that will do it for this week's episode. Any parting words for our listeners before we sign off?
Well, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with it since somebody almost T-boned somebody the other day because they weren't using a turn signal, nor did they stop at a stop sign. People, turn signals, they're not optional in these cars anymore. Please use them and just be nice. Don't be a dick. Make tomorrow better than today and try and make somebody's life better tomorrow. Build on that.
Rob the Preacher. Love it. I'll tack on to the use your turn signals thing because nothing, I mean, spending a week in New Jersey reminded me how much I hate the Oregon drivers. Learn how to zipper merge, people. If you're merging on a zipper merge, you drive all as far as you can until the lane condenses. You don't stop where the line stops. And people in Oregon don't know that. They come to a complete stop a good 500 feet before the merging lane ends, and they almost turn like a 90-degree angle to get into the other lane. It holds up traffic and it drives me insane. So people, if you don't know how to zipper merge, learn. You go as far as you can and then you alternate with the other cars in the other lane. Not that hard. And yeah, I guess you can be nice to each other too.
Like, you could go and read the research on zipper merges. It saves time, folks.
Yes.
Do it right. Don't block people from using the zipper merge. Like, just get over in the right lane or the left lane in a zipper merge and just block everybody. That's asinine too. So please don't do that. But let's be nice.
Love it. Well, I know we had a couple weeks off while we were together, so I think we have some catching up to do. So what do you say? Catch you here next week?
Next week, faux show.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, everyone and anyone that's out there listening. This has been the Father, Son, and the Holy Buckeye podcast. Hope everyone has a great rest of their weekend and a great start to their week, and we will catch up here soon. Stay safe, everyone.